Brandon.
Hey, Yingying.
Let me tell you a joke.
Today must be my lucky day.
All right, let's try it this way. Pretend I'm your friend's wife, who you never met, and you're meeting me for the first time.
This sounds more like a role play than a joke, but I'm up for it. Okay, how do we start?
Let's say I'm really dressed up.
All right, nice.
Start by paying me a compliment.
Okay, nice to meet you, Yingying. You're very beautiful. And now in Chinese, that would be 你很漂亮.
哪里哪里.
Okay, audience, that means where, which is a little strange. Your hair is beautiful?
哪里哪里.
Really? Okay, your eyes?
哪里哪里.
Well, everywhere? Okay, look, this is getting a little personal. My friend might think I'm trying to steal his wife if this keeps going on, right? Should we get a room?
Actually, no. 哪里哪里 is the way that a typical Chinese will respond to any compliment.
It sounds a little bit more like a Chinese version of this old Laurel and Hardy joke, who's on first, but that's definitely another story. Where does nali nali come from?
It actually reflects the Chinese cultural imperatives to deflect a compliment with modesty, which gets us into our topic for today: modesty, humility, and hierarchy.
Let's get into it. Today we're looking at the cultural communication differences between East and West related to compliments to get us going. So let's start off with another typical type of an example. Say you are complimenting a friend's kid for some reason.
Okay, pretend I have one and say something to me about them.
Wow, Yingying, little Jimmy is so smart.
哪有啊? Or 过奖了.
Okay, so what do those phrases mean?
They basically mean not really or that's overrated. It's a way to show our modesty.
That's interesting because that kind of negation forms a yin-yang to neutralize the original comment. Now, to a foreign ear, though, it is pretty strange. In the U.S., that'd be viewed as maybe being falsely modest at best and, frankly, as an insult at worst.
Why an insult?
A friend of mine had a great way of saying this. He worked with Hollywood a lot, and a lot of times people, even famous people, are pretty insecure. And his advice to them was that the most modest yet honest way to respond to a compliment, really any compliment, is just a simple thank you.
Why thank you? Do you actually have to accept it?
Yes, rejecting someone's compliment in the West is really seen as a rejection of their opinion, that they're trying to share with you or give you or honor you in a way. So accepting it humbly helps to maintain harmony.
Oh, speaking of harmony,
yeah.
Our old friend Confucius introduced the hierarchical code to China 2,000 years ago precisely for this reason, to shape society in such a way that would best establish and maintain harmony too.
So how does the hierarchical code work here?
It's very important to remember that social status was traditionally defined by a lot of things, some of which have greater or lesser value today. Wealth and family origins do play a role, but hierarchy is the most important. To start exploring this topic, consider that age is the most obvious outward sign of seniority. So age is taken more seriously than youth here.
But especially in the tech sector or other entrepreneurial industries, sometimes the person in charge is actually much younger than the other managers. How does that factor in?
Well, the boss in a situation is always the leader, and someone being the 领导, actually meaning the boss, here has many meanings or implications. It can mean that he is superior to the person who introduced him.
All right.
Someone introducing someone else as the 领导 say that they care about that person's opinions and mood, and that how he views me is important.
I have seen that in action here. What else does 领导 imply?
Another aspect of introducing someone as one's 领导 in, say, a business meeting is a way of making it clear that the final decision is up to that person.
And I see how that can have strategic usages as well by putting it on their lap, basically.
Right. And 领导 is used in a family context as a show of deference to the other spouse when you want to be clear that the other person has responsibility for some aspect of the family.
Now, Yingying, not to embarrass you too much, but you are a unique case, having been out in front of foreigners as a leader from a pretty young age. How has this dynamic played out for you outside of China?
Well, let me tell you about what happened when I was 22 years old. I was sent to Brazil to teach a group of business executives ranging from, let's say, 22 to 65 years old, from all walks of life. Originally, I was pretty scared because I was worried about how I was going to be perceived. As it turned out, I was really well received and respected by all of my students there because I realized that I had something helpful and valuable to teach them and that I wanted to be there with them. So it worked out great.
And I imagine that the fact that you were presented as the teacher or authority in the first place by the school or organization went a long way toward giving you what we would call the social proof without having to make too much other effort. But how does it work in China?
Well, in China, it's much different. If I'm presenting to a group of more senior leaders here, the fact that I'm younger and yes, are female, puts me at an initial disadvantage that has to be overcome to build the trust and respect needed for effective communication.
You know, that goes to show that it's important to value those who have real capability in some area based on their merits and regardless of the hierarchical factors alone. For instance, in the West, there's this emphasis on striving towards being an egalitarian culture where possible. Now, honestly, that is often more fiction than fact in reality, but the general idea does apply in the sense that your accomplishments and thoughts are respected kind of above and beyond, your age, or maybe you're from a rich family already, or your position, or anything that's not directly relevant to what the situation in question is.
So, in your opinion, how is material wealth valued in the West?
This varies a lot depending on a lot of factors and honestly social classes, but generally speaking, an overemphasis on wealth is kind of looked down upon. Just having a lot of money, quote unquote, isn't respected by really anyone except the lowest social classes. This also gets into this idea of old money versus new money and the snobbery that comes with that. That is a topic for another show that we'll probably just call wealth. But for now, let's just remember that the more enlightened, or we shall say egalitarian position, is that anyone can become anything that they want to. And you know what? That's proven to be a pretty valid hypothesis on a daily basis, so I'm going to stick with it.
And going back to that nali cultural idea, the younger generations here in China, my age or even younger, care less and less about the hierarchical limitations. The post-90s generation, or we call 90后, the Generation Z, is becoming known as one that will quit their jobs with less hesitation than ever before to seek a better opportunity. So times are changing everywhere here.
It sounds like we'll have to update this episode in a year or two to stay current with reality. Good news is, I guess that means we'll never run out of show topics.
Well, I think overcoming limitations of a hierarchy or supposed social status is a required step to achieve a better, more effective, and frankly, more honest communication, which is part of why that's the focus of this entire week. It's crucially important.
Preach it, Ying-Ying. I would love to have a big pile of money myself, but I do think it's ultimately what you do with it that really matters.
I love it. All right, so what did we learn this week?
Well, I learned that it's really hard to give someone a compliment here, at least in the way that you might do that in the West, and also that navigating hierarchy is a long and time-honored tradition, but that it is changing rapidly.
We discussed the importance of paying respect to one's 领导 and how that applies in work as well as family life.
And we talked about ways to hopefully overcome the limitations of hierarchy where the traditions of it are still firmly rooted.
Tomorrow, we'll look at how to apply this knowledge in the context of our negotiation, as well as talking much more about communication in general. Thanks for listening to us today. I'm Yingying Li.
And I'm Brendan Davis.
And we'll see you tomorrow on How China Works.